are scrolling online late at night, and you finally see it.
Oh, the dream home.
Exactly. The dream home. It has the perfect kitchen island, the right amount of yard, and amazingly, it is actually sitting right inside your budget.
Which is a miracle in itself these days.
Right. So you do what anyone would do. You eagerly call up a local real estate agent, assuming you will just, set a time, meet them at the front door, and take a look around.
Just a casual Saturday afternoon tour.
Yeah, exactly. But instead of a friendly handshake and a key turning in a lock, the agent sends you a massive stack of binding legal paperwork.
Oof. Yeah.
And you have to sign it before you're even allowed to step foot on the driveway. It is the real estate equivalent of having to, negotiate your salary and sign an HR contract before you're even allowed to walk into the building for a job interview.
That is a really great analogy because it really is a massive shock to the system for most buyers.
You're just sitting there thinking, I literally just wanted to see if the countertops were real granite, and now I'm signing a legally binding contract.
I mean, if you've bought a house before, this completely upends how you are used to the process working. You used to be able to just casually shop around.
Right.
But now the walls are up immediately. But what we need to establish right out of the gate for this deep dive is that this isn't some sneaky sales tactic dreamed up by a local broker trying to lock you down.
It's not just one aggressive agent.
No, not at all. If you are looking to buy a house in Texas, this is your new mandatory reality.
And that is exactly why we are tearing this topic apart today. Because if you do not know this is coming, it feels incredibly jarring.
Oh, absolutely.
So to understand what this paperwork actually is, we are pulling from a few key sources to map out the new 2026 Texas real estate landscape.
We've got some heavy hitters for sources today.
We do. We're looking directly at the statutory changes from the 89th Texas legislative session, plus the official regulatory guidelines published by the Texas Real Estate Commission.
The folks who actually write the rules.
Right. And to ground all of this legal theory, we are using an educational brief provided by Albert G. Garcia. He's a practicing realtor based out in Harlingen, Texas.
Yeah, he's dealing with the actual fallout of these rules on the ground in the Rio Grande Valley every single day.
So let's just get right into it. The end of the hop in the car era.
It really is monumental because for decades, the entire culture of residential real estate was built entirely on that casual hop in the car mentality.
You see a sign? You call the number, they open the door.
Exactly. But as of January 1st, 2026, the rules of the game changed permanently.
So what exactly did the legislature do?
Well, during the 89th Texas legislative session, lawmakers amended the Real Estate License Act. Specifically, they added Section 1101.563.
Okay, and what does Section 1101.563 actually say in plain English?
It legally requires any licensed agent working with a prospective residential buyer to enter into a written agreement before showing any home, period.
Wow.
Any home. And it goes even further than that. If you are, say, out of state and buying a house sight unseen, they must have this signed agreement before they can even present an offer on your behalf.
Wait, really? So the state legislature just woke up one day and decided to criminalize casual house tours?
It sounds wild when you put it like that.
I mean, what is the actual mechanism driving this? Why did Texas suddenly decide to bring the legal hammer down?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Texas didn't do this in a vacuum. To understand the mechanism, we have to trace the state-level law back to a massive national policy shift that happened in 2024.
Ah, okay. The 2024 changes.
Right. That was when the National Association of Realtors updated their MLS participation rules.
Hold on, let's define that for a second. The MLS. We hear that acronym thrown around on literally every house hunting TV show, but what is it functionally?
Good question. The MLS is the multiple listing service. It is essentially the master database where brokers share all their property listings.
So it's like the central hub.
Yeah, it's a private cooperative. And if you want access to it to do your job as a real estate agent, you have to play by their rules.
Makes sense.
So in 2024, the National Association of Realtors changed those rules to essentially require written buyer agreements nationwide before home tours could happen.
Wow. Nationwide.
Yeah. So the Texas legislature, seeing this massive shift in industry standards, decided to just codify that standard into actual state law for 2026.
Got it.
And according to the Texas Real Estate Commission, or TRGA, The legal intent behind all of this is strictly consumer protection.
Consumer protection.
Yeah, it is about ensuring that the buyer and the agent know exactly what their obligations are to each other from day one, before any actual work begins.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Mm-hmm.
because I am looking at this from the perspective of a curious buyer, and I am really struggling with this consumer protection angle.
I hear that a lot.
Because if I am just starting my search, right, maybe I am completely uncommitted and just want to check out a neighborhood vibe, forcing me to sign a formal legal document right off the bat does not make me feel protected.
It feels aggressive.
Exactly. It makes me feel vulnerable. It feels like a massive barrier to entry just to look at a living room.
I totally get it. I completely understand why it feels that way from the outside looking in. You felt free under the old system.
I did.
But legally speaking, that casual hop-in-the-car method was inherently dangerous for you. You were incredibly vulnerable without even realizing it.
Wait, how? It felt totally low stakes to just walk through a house with a friendly agent?
Well, it felt low stakes until you inadvertently gave up all your negotiating power.
What do you mean?
Think about how those casual tours usually go. You are walking through a house, making small talk with the agent showing you around, right?
Sure, yeah.
You might casually mention, we are pre-approved for $400,000, but we'd love to get this one for $350,000.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. Or you might tell them you are desperate to move because your lease is up next month. You think this person is your advocate.
Because they're opening the door for me.
Exactly. But without a written buyer representation agreement, that agent's allegiance is totally undefined. Historically, before these buyer representation agreements existed, agents were technically operating under something called sub-agency.
Sub-agency. What does that actually mean in practice?
It meant that all agents, even the nice one driving you around in their car, legally represented the seller.
Wait, really?
Yes, they were a sub-agent of the seller's broker. So if you told that agent you could actually afford to pay $50,000 more for the house, their fiduciary duty was to relay that information to the seller.
To get the seller the highest price possible.
Exactly. You were spilling your financial secrets to someone who had a legal obligation to use them against you.
That is wild. I had absolutely no idea that the history of it was so completely stacked against the buyer.
It really was. Now, sub-agency is practically dead and generally banned in Texas now, thankfully.
Well, that's a relief.
But even so, if you do not have a signed representation agreement, the agent showing you the house has no formal legal fiduciary duty to keep your secrets safe.
Or to fight for my best financial outcome.
Precisely. By forcing the paperwork up front, the 2026 law eliminates that murky gray area entirely. It guarantees that if an agent is opening a door for you, their loyalties and their confidentiality requirements are clearly defined in black and white.
Okay, that clicks for me now. It is exactly like talking to a lawyer at a cocktail party versus actually retaining them as your attorney.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Because if you just chat with a lawyer at a party about a legal issue, they don't owe you attorney-client privilege. They could turn around and testify against you. You have to sign the formal retainer to get the actual shield of protection.
And this new real estate law essentially forces you to sign the retainer before you start sharing your financial life story.
But if we're going to ask a buyer to sign a retainer that naturally makes them feel a bit defensive, we need to dive into the actual text of these documents.
We definitely do.
We need to decode exactly what this contract is, and probably more importantly, what it isn't. Because looking at Albert Garcia's notes, he goes out of his way to clarify this point immediately.
Yes, and it is such a vital distinction. Listeners, signing a buyer representation agreement does not mean you are buying a house.
Right.
It is not a purchase contract for a property. You are not committing to taking on a 30-year mortgage, and you are not making an offer on the house you are about to tour.
So what is it?
You are simply defining an employment relationship.
Okay, so it is purely an employment contract for the agent.
Precisely. In Texas, realtors use standardized forms created by the state association. The two most common ones you will encounter are the long form, which is known as TXR 1501, and the short form, TXR 1507.
TXR 1501 and 1507. What is the functional difference between those two in the real world? Like, why would I sign one over the other?
Well, TXR 1501 is the Comprehensive Residential Buyer Representation Agreement. This is the full package.
To this one.
The big one. It establishes an exclusive relationship where the agent is legally bound to act as your fiduciary.
Meaning they have to put my interests first.
Always. They are committing to scour the market for you, analyze property values to ensure you don't overpay, negotiate the contract term, and guide you through the grueling inspection and financing timelines.
That's a lot of work. And what about the short form, the 1507?
TXR 1507 is essentially a stripped-down version. It might be used for a much shorter duration or, if you are specifically retaining an agent just to write an offer on a house you already found yourself.
Okay.
But the mechanics of this representation are strictly governed. For example, traditional dual agency is flat out illegal in Texas.
Dual agency being what, exactly?
That's where one agent secretly tries to represent both the buyer and the seller in the exact same transaction.
Oh, yeah, because you can't fiercely negotiate for a lower price for the buyer while simultaneously negotiating for a higher price for the seller.
Right.
That is a massive conflict of interest.
Exactly. It's impossible. Now, a brokerage can act as an intermediary, meaning the broker handles both sides of the transaction, but only under very strict disclosed legal requirements where different agents within the brokerage are assigned to advise each party.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a minute.
Go for it.
Let's say I am just not ready to commit. I don't want the full TXR 1501 employment contract. I don't want an exclusive relationship. I literally just want to see the layout of a house I saw online.
Right.
Can't the agent and I just sign a day pass? Like some sort of loophole document that says, I am not hiring you. Just open this one specific door for me.
You can, actually. Texas law does provide a mechanism for that. It is a limited showing-only agreement.
Oh, so there is a loophole.
There is, and it might sound incredibly appealing if you are commitment phobic, but it comes with a severe caveat.
Which is?
A showing-only agreement legally offers you absolutely zero representation. Zero. The agent is strictly a tour guide. They cannot advise you on whether the house is overpriced. They cannot point out red flags with the foundation, and they certainly cannot negotiate on your behalf.
They just unlock the deadbolt.
That's it. Furthermore, Texas law dictates that this specific limited agreement must be non-exclusive, and it legally cannot last for more than 14 days.
A 2-week guest pass. That honestly feels incredibly risky, because if you fall in love with the house on the tour, you are standing there completely unrepresented against a seller who definitely has professional representation on their side.
Which is exactly why many professionals refuse to use it. If you look at Albert Garcia's specific Brokerage Realty One Group Modern Edge, they flat out refuse to utilize the showing-only form.
Really? They won't use it at all?
Nope. They mandate a full buyer representation agreement before showing properties, period. The only way around it is if you happen to walk into a public open house completely on your own.
I thought that detail in the source material was fascinating. From a business perspective, that is a highly aggressive stance.
It is bold.
Yeah, they are actively turning away easy, casual showings. They are perfectly willing to lose the flaky, uncommitted buyers in order to mandate formal representation.
Yes, but it makes total sense.
It does. They're telling the market, we are not tour guides, we are licensed fiduciaries, and we refuse to operate in a way that strips you of your consumer protections.
Exactly. It's a strong stance, but it aligns flawlessly with the intent of the 2026 legislation.
Right.
Because if the state's goal is to protect consumers from the dangers of unrepresented transactions, allowing buyers to wander the market with 14-day showing-only passes kind of defeats the fundamental purpose.
It totally undermines the law.
Yeah, you're not securing their legal interests at all.
Okay, so we have established that under a full agreement, the agent is legally required to work for you. They are running market analyses, pulling comparable sales data, writing up the legal offer, negotiating repairs.
Dealing with the inspector when they find a leaky roof.
Right, and keeping your lender on schedule. That is an immense amount of highly skilled, time-consuming labor.
It is a full-time job.
So the next logical question, and the one that probably makes buyers sweat the most, is how exactly is all of this labor being paid for?
Yes. Compensation is universally the #1 concern for buyers right now.
I bet.
Historically, buyers never really had to think about the mechanics of this. For decades, the standard practice was that the seller paid a commission out of the proceeds of the home sale, say 6%, and that 6% was split evenly between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent.
So the buyer just brought their down payment to closing and didn't worry about the agent's fee because it was baked into the seller's math.
Exactly. But the new 2026 law changes that math.
It forces the math out into the open, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The agreement you sign as a buyer must state the exact amount or rate of your broker's compensation.
Wait, it can't just be vague.
No, it cannot be open-ended language like, we will accept whatever the seller offers or standard industry rates. It must be clearly defined whether that is a flat fee or a specific percentage. Furthermore, the contract requires a conspicuous statement, meaning it cannot be buried in fine print, explicitly stating that commissions are fully negotiable and are not set by law.
So there is no legally mandated standard commission rate in Texas.
None whatsoever.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I'm thinking about the what-ifs.
Okay, hit me.
If the contract says my agent's fee is, say, 3% of the purchase price, and the old system was that the seller usually pays that, what happens if the seller simply refuses? These new mandatory agreements have to address that scenario, right?
They do, and this raises a massive issue that every single listener needs to fully grasp.
Oh boy.
If the seller does not offer to pay your agent's commission and they refuse to negotiate it into the final purchase price, the legal obligation falls to you, the buyer, to fulfill the terms of the employment contract you signed.
Wait, hold on a second. Let's think about the mechanics of that.
Yeah, let's do the math.
If I am buying a $300,000 house and I have spent the last 5 years scraping together a $60,000 down payment, my savings account is completely drained.
You're tapped out.
I'm tapped out. If the seller refuses to pay the buyer's agent and my agent's fee is 3%, which is, what, $9,000?
$9,000, yeah.
Do I have to just write a personal check for $9,000 at the closing table? Can I roll that into my mortgage?
Generally, no, you cannot roll an agent's commission into a standard mortgage.
Are you serious?
Yes. Mortgages are tied strictly to the appraised value of the physical property, not the professional services used to acquire it. So you are looking at paying that out of pocket at closing.
That is terrifying. You could casually sign this paperwork on a Sunday afternoon just to tour a nice split level, not read the fine print about compensation, and suddenly find yourself legally on the hook for thousands of dollars in unexpected cash.
That is the exact scenario the new law forces you to confront up front.
Wow.
This requires intense strategy between you and your agent before you ever submit an offer. A good agent will negotiate with the seller to secure a seller concession, meaning the seller agrees to credit you the money at closing to cover your agent's fee.
But if the seller holds firm,
If the seller holds firm, you have to be prepared for the reality of that cost. You cannot treat this buyer representation agreement like the terms and conditions on a software update where you just blindly scroll to the bottom and click agree.
definitely not.
Our source material from Albert Garcia lays out specific questions you absolutely must ask before your pen ever touches the paper.
Okay, so what are the absolute critical things a buyer needs to look for?
First, clarify the geographic area.
What do you mean?
Well, are you binding yourself to this agent for the entire state of Texas or just for properties within, say, Cameron County?
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have even thought of that.
Second, what property types does the contract cover? Is it just single-family homes, or does it lock you in if you decide to suddenly buy an empty lot of land?
Good point.
Third, what is the duration? Is it a 30-day agreement while you just sort of test the waters, or are you locked in for 6 entire months?
And what about cancellation? Like, if I sign a 6-month agreement and after 2 weeks I realize this agent is terrible at communicating, what happens? Can I fire them? Or am I legally trapped in a bad working relationship?
You need to know the exact cancellation terms. Are there termination fees? Under what conditions can you break the contract? Albert Garcia's golden rule in his educational brief is incredibly simple. Never sign anything you do not fully understand.
Which is just good life advice in general.
Exactly. And a competent realtor is going to welcome these questions. In fact, they should be proactively explaining these sections to you.
Right.
If an agent tries to rush you through the compensation section or, brushes off your questions about how to fire them, that is a massive red flag indicating how they will handle complex issues later on.
That makes perfect sense. Because if an agent is evasive about explaining their own employment contract, how on earth are they going to handle a tense, high-stakes negotiation with a difficult seller over a failing foundation?
They won't handle it well. It requires a high level of professional rigor.
Which really brings us to who this legislation impacts the most on a local level.
Right.
Because if a wealthy corporate investor is buying their 10th rental property, they have an attorney to review these representation agreements.
That's fine.
But what about everyday people who are just trying to break into the housing market for the first time?
This is where the context of Albert Garcia's work in the Rio Grande Valley is so illuminating. He operates in Harlingen, Brownsville, and McAllen, and notably, he is a TSAHC preferred realtor.
For those outside of Texas, TSAHC stands for the Texas State Affordable Housing Corporation. They provide incredible resources for working-class Texans.
They really do. They cater to first-time buyers, public school teachers, police officers, emergency medical workers, families who are working incredibly hard just to get a foothold in the housing market.
Yeah.
Now, these are the exact demographics who might feel the most intimidated by a sudden stack of 2026 legal paperwork demanding compensation guarantees.
Of course. I imagine the paperwork for those assistance programs is already a nightmare. If you're trying to utilize a government grant, an extra legal contract to hire an agent just feels like another bureaucratic wall keeping you out of the middle class.
It absolutely feels like a wall. But paradoxically, because of how complex the affordable housing process is, they are the buyers who benefit the absolute most from having a binding representation agreement.
Wait, really? How so?
Consider the mechanics of a TSAHC loan. If you are applying for down payment assistance or a mortgage credit certificate, the process is incredibly rigid.
I'm sure there are a million rules.
There are strict income limits you have to prove, specific credit score requirements, mandatory homebuyer education classes you have to complete, and you have to work with specific approved lender networks.
That is a lot to juggle.
And the timelines are unforgiving. Navigating that bureaucratic maze requires a real estate agent who is legally invested in your outcome from day one. You do not just need a 14-day tour guide opening doors.
Because a tour guide isn't going to help you with the grants.
Exactly. A tour guide cannot help you structure an offer that aligns with TSAHC grant requirements.
Yeah.
You need a legally bound fiduciary who understands the intricate mechanics of those local programs and is contractually obligated to get you across the finish line.
You know, when you lay out the mechanics like that, the balance sheet of this 2026 law becomes much clearer.
The pros and cons.
Yeah, the advantages are actually substantial. You get absolute clarity on loyalty.
Right.
You get professional, legally mandated guidance through inspections, complex financing structures, and pricing negotiations.
Right.
You gain access to deep local market knowledge from someone who is legally tethered to your success.
But, and there's always a but, the realities you have to manage are that you are committing to one professional for a set period of time. You lose the ability to casually date around with 5 different agents on 5 different weekends.
Right, the hop in the car era is over.
It's over. And most critically, you have to manage that potential financial liability. You have to clearly strategize with your agent about how their fee will be covered if the seller refuses to play ball.
It really is a massive paradigm shift for anyone buying a home in Texas. But, you know, looking at the source material, there is a core philosophy driving this shift that I think is the perfect takeaway.
Yeah.
It's a quote from Albert Garcia's approach to his clients that beautifully summarizes why this legislation exists in the first place. He says, transparency should come before trust, not after it.
Wow. That is a profoundly challenging way to view professional relationships.
It changes everything. Because while the new TXR 1501 paperwork might seem like an intimidating legal hurdle designed to keep you from touring your dream home, it is actually an architectural blueprint for a healthy, transparent working relationship.
It forces the hard conversations early.
Exactly. It forces the uncomfortable conversations about money, expectations, and legal loyalty to happen in the daylight before anyone's emotions get tied up in a property.
Because once you fall in love with the kitchen island, you lose all your leverage.
Yep. So when you do finally walk into that perfect house with the granite island, you are not wondering whose side the agent is on. You know exactly who is standing next to you and exactly how hard they are legally required to fight for your financial future.
That's a great way to reframe it.
And the biggest lesson here is to treat that initial meeting like an interview. You are the boss, you are doing the hiring, and you are in control of the terms. Read the fine print, demand explanations for every clause, and never sign anything you do not completely understand.
Absolutely. And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over regarding that idea of transparency.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about the other professional relationships in your life. When you meet a new doctor, a mechanic, or even a new colleague at work, we instinctively try to build trust first through small, casual interactions.
Fill them out.
Right, we feel them out. And then we formalize the financial details or the heavy commitments much later, once we feel comfortable. Well, this new Texas real estate law forces you to flip that entirely on its head. It mandates that you formalize all the complex legal and financial details in a binding contract before you have even spent 10 minutes together looking at a house.
That's so true.
So, my question for you is this. Does forcing harsh legal transparency upfront actually accelerate trust between strangers because there are no hidden agendas? Or does it permanently alter the nature of buying a home, turning what used to be a relationship-driven process into something purely transactional from the very first hello?
Oh, man. It is a fascinating question, and one you will have to answer for yourself the next time you call an agent to look at a house and get handed a contract instead of a key. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.